A peaceful demonstration last night in St. Louis County, Missouri. About 150 people gathering at a mall to protest a judge's decision to acquit a white former police officer who shot and killed 24-year-old Anthony Lamar Smith in 2011. Smith was African American. There were days of violent protests in St. Louis area after the judge's ruling last week.
Oh, the latest twist in the Russia investigations. President Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, will reportedly offered to provide briefings, it is said, on the U.S. presidential race to a Russian billionaire who has close ties to the Kremlin. That's according to a July 2016 email exchange. Reports also have claimed that Manafort was under surveillance, apparently for his foreign lobbying work, and he was wiretapped by the FBI in a counterintelligence investigation. Special counsel Robert Mueller is said to have been investigating all this and those emails, as well as potentially the financial trail and all that means. So how does this fit into the Russian email investigation? Judy Miller joins us, adjunct fellow at the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research and a Pulitzer Prize-winning author and journalist and Fox News contributor. Judy, always good to see you. You know, I covered the mob for a long time, and this is like, it sounds like they're trying to squeeze Manafort. I mean, the report says they busted in his door, or they picked the lock, busted in his apartment door, like ransacked the place, take pictures of his suits, grab all his stuff. I mean, it sounds like Mueller is trying to force him to flip.
It certainly does. And Eric, with your background in covering the mob, you understand counter-mob techniques, and this is definitely one of them. We don't know what, if any, political relationship there was in terms of Paul Manafort's connections to the Russians on behalf of Trump. We don't know whether or not President Trump ordered or asked Paul Manafort to contact Russians to offer them exclusive briefings. But we do know that Bob Mueller, the special prosecutor, has Paul Manafort clearly in his sights. He is not a witness. He is a target of this investigation. And the goal clearly is to get enough on Paul Manafort to make sure that he has a choice. Either spend the rest of your life or a large part of it in jail because he's 68 years old, very close in age to Donald Trump, or cooperate, which he apparently is not doing now, and give us whatever you have on the president. We don't know what he's going to do. We don't know what Bob Mueller has. But we do know that this investigation is really speeding up, and Bob Mueller is in hot pursuit of Paul Manafort.
And what does it mean when you say a target? I mean, there are all these reports about, you know, a money laundering investigation, money in banks of Cyprus, and all of this foreign money. You had served, what, 84 or 85 days in federal prison for protecting a source. So the federal prosecutors have targeted you. What is that like? What is the pressure like, and how do you succumb or not succumb?
Well, it's really very, very intense, and it's an experience you never quite forget, and I'm sure Mr. Manafort never will either, no matter how this thing comes out. But I have to tell you, Eric, I've just returned from the Ukraine, and there is perhaps no more unpopular man in the Ukraine, not the Ukraine, in Ukraine than Paul Manafort, because he represented the horribly brutal dictator who was ousted in the Revolution of Dignity. He got millions of dollars from him, and that money was apparently funneled into American or Swiss-based corporations. We don't know yet. But he is really viewed as a man with blood on his hands. And that's not Judy Miller talking. That's his daughter talking, according to an email exchange they had that was published on a Ukrainian website. His daughter, Andrea, who is a lawyer, said to him, basically, Father, you have blood, this is blood money, and your activities are legally questionable. So I think Mr. Manafort has just a bucket load of legal vulnerability, and that should worry Donald Trump if the president had any untoward dealings with him, and we don't know that yet.
Could this end up, I mean, having nothing to do with any Russian interference or this sort of thing, and be merely a financial, you know, money laundering, tax evasion type, you know, investigation, you know, just that we see federal prosecutors prosecute all the time?
It clearly could. It could end there. But Mr. Manafort was so involved with oligarchs like Deripaska who is one of the wealthiest men in Ukraine, but also more than that, he had real ties, deep ties, political ties to the Kremlin and to Vladimir Putin. So Paul Manafort was not just in this for the money, he was actually wielding influence, and that means that he was a political player as well as someone who was getting paid handsomely for his work. Now, how much Donald Trump knew about this before he hired him, after a casual conversation in an elevator when Mr. Trump needed someone to prevent a floor fight at the Republican convention, I don't know. And we also know that since Mr. Manafort is not yet cooperating with Mr. Mueller, as far as we know, we really don't know what, if any, compromising information he's provided him about the president. The president did fire him. Paul Manafort resigned, but basically the president took offense when Paul Manafort said to other people, you know, the president has a really short attention span, and I have to go on TV to get his attention.
Yeah, that's what.
And that didn't make the president happy.
Yeah, that was the report. Judy, who's been the
Right.
target, as we've said in the sites. Paul Manafort, who has a history in Republican politics, of course, national politics. We shall see. Judy, good to see you. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you, Eric.
Arthel?
Well, First Lady Melania Trump making a very special stop on her first foreign trip. How Mrs. Trump is honoring an athletic competition for the brave men and women of the military wounded in battle.